box score might be a little misleading from that Army game just because of the offense that Army runs. What do you see from Northern Illinois in their run defense?
Well, there's nothing misleading about what those stats were. I mean, Army does that against a lot of teams, though. They run the ball very efficiently. That option game is pretty tough. They run, but I think that anytime you're returning 3 or 4 guys up front, that's always a good start, especially your best 2 pass rushers. And in the secondary, when you return your whole secondary, you're just it's a slam dunk for your defense getting better. And I think that that's what's happening with the defense.
Can you just talk, obviously you mentioned a lot of depth chart changes. Can you talk about what you did at the defensive line there with moving Kevin up and Jordan to tackle?
Well, it's a little bit skewed in the fact that last week, you know how we've been listing Tobin at end/Sam. Well, last week he played a lot of Sam in the game. Okay, so what happens there is Kiba actually plays the end opposite of Josh when we do that. So that is based off of lining up just in a true nickel front when we're in that rotation that we've been in. So Jordan and Kiba are best suited in nickel to play 3 technique, and Kevin and John Williams are best suited to play 1 technique. But when we play end, when we want to get bigger, the guy that we decided will move outside, we've been using Jordan and Kiba in both those capacities. So we wanted to settle Jordan down into 1 spot right there. So that's what that was all about.
What's the most exciting thing about the Saints?
Well, I think that the most exciting thing is he's seen those other 2 guys play pretty well. And he knows for him to get snaps, he's going to have to earn them. A lot of times when a player leaves and he figures, well, they need me. Well, he's sitting in the stands those games, watching those guys run the ball pretty well, and then he's starting to question, well, I wonder if they need me. So I think he's very hungry. That excites me.
Did he treat his time away as well as you possibly treated?
Well, I mean, it was a combination. He worked hard, but the best part about it is, we gave him enough reps early in practice so that he didn't, forget what we do. But the rest of the time, we sent him to show team. We made him against the first defense the whole time. We might have the best show team in America. I mean, we got that number 9 over there as the quarterback, and we got McKay over there as one of the wide receivers, and Sims has been a running back. I mean, sometimes I go look over there, I might want the show team. But anytime you get to run in practice full speed against the defense, you're getting to practice things at the speed that the game is played at. When you go against a show team, that's not the speed that the game is played at. It's because you're looking off of cards, it always slows down. So I think that he's got some great opportunity to go ahead and refine his skills and get beat up a little bit in the process. That's 2 good things.
Does that give you confidence, working him in like that you won't have to shake off much rust?
Oh, I expect him ready to go. I really do. I don't expect there to be any rust.
What kind of, you haven't shown a lot of, and you've even talked about not wanting to do running back by committee, but with now 3 talented backs back there, are we going to see more of Tony on the outside as a wide receiver, or are we going to see more rotation in that backfield?
Well, I think that you're going to have to wait and see how the game plays out, because I'm not going to sit here and say exactly what I'm going to do in the game. Hey, Dave, you want to know what the game plan? I'm not going to quite do that, but I will tell you, out of our backs, that the most polished receiver out of the backs would be Tony. So it gives you opportunity to do some things that he would just be better than the other guys at doing them.
You said during fall camp that you weren't going to hesitate to put James back in there, but With how well your backs have played, is there a slight hesitation to break up what you have going?
No. Usually when I say something, I'm usually a man of conviction, and I won't hesitate putting it in there.
Randall Dent, was that defensive tackle out of need in the spring, he's already first.
He was an offensive guard playing defensive tackle, that's correct.
So he's always been offensive guard, he said.
Yeah, that's what he is. I mean,
Is it impressive that he's already learned enough?
I think the fact that he's been able to move ahead of guys that have played that position on a regular basis says a lot about Randall Dent. I mean, I've been very pleased at Randall Dent's progress, and he just keeps getting better. I already knew he was a powerful guy, because when we played him on defense, you know, the one thing he could do, he could knock everyone back, he just couldn't get off the block, because he's an offensive guard. Okay, but as an offensive guard, that's what you're looking for. So I kept looking at him, and I said, buddy, don't worry, he's gonna be on offense. He's gonna be, you know, what do you say, he can't make a play? I said, don't worry, he's gonna play an offensive guard anyway. I mean, so he's actually now settled in nicely. And actually, that right side of the line is settled in pretty nicely. And what we're gonna do now with Riley being down is we're gonna get in a little bit of a three-man rotation and get Aslan more involved here. Between the people who have position flexibility are Aslan and Gavin. Randall's settled in at right guard, so that's what we're gonna try to do now.
You feel comfortable with them on depth on the right side?
Yeah, you got 3 to play 2. Most people have 2 to play 2. That's it. You know, you don't lose too many guys at that position. What do? Wallow around on the ground a little bit, you know. I mean, you don't get too many of them who really get hurt. They just get banged up. They usually don't get hurt. They get banged up and feel sorry for themselves, that's all.
You've got Andrew Brazil, he's got a start under his belt, he has a 100-yard game under his belt. I mean, have you noticed those things, you know, not arrogantly, but maybe just confidence-wise, making him realize that he can be more of a factor?
Well, we've actually been trying to push Andrew into this position since the springtime, because in the springtime, some of those things you saw in the game the other day, we've been seeing all along. It's just that you have to be willing to take an older guy's job. And sometimes people don't understand that. You have to be willing to not say, well, he's a senior, when he's gone, then it'll be mine. You have to be willing to go take it. Okay, and if you just are willing to sit back and let that matriculate, then you're not there. Well, you know, he started to challenge more and more. Instead of just settling in and being the number 2 guy, you know, he's competed to be the number 1 guy, and you know, he's potentially a very good weapon.
Is that progress a correlation with the more chances down the field you've taken, or is that just something you hope would happen?
Well, with him in there, is there more balls that'll be thrown deeper? Absolutely.
Yeah.
Because you can find them.
Right.
You know, that's one of the things that, hey, look, no matter how fast you are when you're a little guy, I mean, the quarterback is thrown to a spot, not a person. You know, when the bigger you are, the easier you are to see.
On the same sort of note, you know, he jumped ahead of DJ there. DJ's obviously visibly struggled a little bit to get out of the gate. Do you have any idea why he's had a rough start?
Well, DJ's got the same amount of reps, you know, recently than he normally has. Maybe he took more of the second reps last week rather than the first reps. Our receivers all get plenty of reps. You know, DJ, you just go by, you have to go by performance.
Sure.
You can't go by seniority. You got to go by performance and who you think gives you the best chance right now. Right now, DJ's not out of the mix, just turns out he's playing better. That's why he's playing.
You weren't real happy with the kickoff return on Saturday.
You know, I wasn't. That is an understatement. But sorry for interrupting you, Austin.
Getting Trey in there, is that maybe a way to get a little spark with that?
I think that the one thing you better do is, if you have other people that can do that job, see if somebody else could do it better. You know, I think that if you just settle in and just say he's the guy, and you aren't doing something about it, then as a coach, you're not doing your job. You know, part of our job is to find answers. And when things, you know, no matter what they are, when things aren't working too well, you know, you can scheme, you know, as part of the answer, and then you can change personnel as the other part of the answer. So we'll see how that works.
Coach, with the road game losing streak, do you do anything special to address that, or you just focus on the opponent and let that take care of itself? How do you deal with this?
I will be using it, they will hear it several times this week. That'll be one of my main messages. It'll be my vintage New Jersey sarcasm, okay? And you can take that for what it's worth, but the two things they're gonna hear about, you know, that is certainly one of them.
Talked a lot about Sims coming back, but what about Carnes?
Yeah, well, I think that, first of all, let's start with Riley Jeffers. I think Riley Jeffers did above and beyond the call of duty. Here's a guy who had never snapped in a high school game. In a high school game. And this kid snaps for the first 3 games of the year. And our punt, you know, hey, not every snap was perfect, but I mean, our punting average has been really, really good. You know, so we're not going to just hand the job to Carnes. I think Carnes is probably better than Riley, but he's going to have to show that practice that he is, or else we'll keep snapping Riley. I think we'll gain more on the short snaps. You know, I think that, you know, Trevor, when you're all taped up and everything to play the interior line and then have to short snap, it's not the same as when, you know, then all you have to do is go in there and fire one back there. And I think that we'll probably gain as much or more in that position.
You also talked about one of the downfalls of that happening was not being able to give Trevor that rest. How much
I don't think it's the rest. I think it's more the, you know, you get all lathered up as an offensive lineman to play interior offensive line. As a snapper, you want nothing on you. You want no sleeves. You want as little on you as possible. But all you want to do is be worried about throwing the ball back. And there really, you know, there's a conflict of interest between those two things right there.
Corey Shepard's a guy that's been made a pretty quick move up that depth chart. Is that more just to get some speed out there in that secondary?
Which one?
Ja'Cory Shepard?
Yeah, well, Ja'Cory has been somebody who Campo's been tooting his horn now. First of all, we had to have a trade, you know, between the offense and the defense. We need to have a trade, and there were draft choices and everything that were involved. You know, and there were considerations for down the road on this one, for him to take him from offense to defense. But really, Ja'Cory was, you know, competing, at the time he was at best our third slot, at best, where Campo believed that he could play himself into the 2 deep. And to be honest with you, right now he's playing himself into the 2 deep. So, you know, he's playing himself into a backup corner. I think Ja'Cory Shepard would be a fine slot receiver. So I don't think it's without skills on offense. I think that he sees himself having a greater opportunity to, you know, move up the ranks on defense, and he's got quick feet and work. He can backpedal and he can turn his hips, and not every offensive player can play that position.
Is it a player to be named later? Who was the?
Yeah, there's player and there's other considerations as well.
You coach any chance that Kale and or Lubbock might be available this week? And are they heading in the right direction?
I'd be very surprised if Kale didn't play. Watching him run on Sunday, he looked pretty normal on Sunday. He didn't look nearly as normal like last Thursday. You know, Lubbock looked a little bit behind him, but he's practicing today. And I told Clint and I told Dave that when today's over, I want to kind of state of the union on where we are with him, to see whether or not he's a frontliner, whether or not he's a backup, or whether or not he's going to be on a trip. You know, I'm not really sure what status he is yet, but I know one thing: we don't have anyone. The only ones that are on the, you know, true questionable to doubtful list, you know, You know, Riley was the only guy that, you know, was kind of new, and I got another backup who's got pneumonia, but, other than that, you know, we should be in pretty good shape.
Randall physically looks like an offensive lineman and isn't explosive like a defensive lineman. Are there personality differences sometimes between offense and defense, or is it purely a physical thing?
Actually, the defensive coaches always said, well, you know, when they're not a good enough athlete, they go over and play offense. That's what defensive coaches say. But actually, the best offensive linemen are guys who play with a defensive mentality. If you think about all the really great offensive linemen that you could think of, they're all nasty players. So I think that there's a lot of benefit from having flipped over from that mentality on defense over offense.
Is there more, I think I know the answer, but more mentally as an offensive lineman, and defense more mental responsibilities and studying and all that?
That's a trick question, isn't it? Because if I say that, I get all the defensive guys, man. I don't know the answer to that question.
Yeah.
Okay, I don't know.
Yeah, someone else.
I'm not taking that bait.
Going back to Pearson, what do you like about him lining up at receiver?
I haven't lined him up a receiver. You know, I've shipped him out into the slot, and he's run corner routes that he's got open and caught. I kind of like that. He's come out of the backfield, run a wheel route for about another 25 yards. I like that too. So I just think he's got good ball skills and good route running ability for a running back. But make no bones about it, he is a running back. He's not a wide receiver.
You mentioned, you know, you'd be surprised if Kale didn't play this weekend, and I know you said earlier you don't want to get into the details, but if Kale is in there, are we going to see less of Pearson lining up as a running back and then shifting as a receiver?
I could tell you, but then, hey Dave, hold on a minute. No, I'm not going to answer that one.
Okay.
Okay.
What do you, are you finished?
Yeah, I'm done with this.
What do you?
1-2, just lost 2 in a row. I'm having a great time.
What do you think of Dane's, you know, you talked last week about him being looser, not carrying the weight of his shoulders. You already talked about how you thought he played, but what about specific to that? I mean, did you see that from him?
I think that it'll just get better and better each week, to be perfectly honest with you. I thought he was better this week than he was the first 2 weeks. And I think he'll be better this coming week than he was last week. I think that, you know, I'm talking about turning the corner, Matt. That's one of the things, you know, that there's several things when you come in there, you have to make sure that you don't get your priorities wrong. And to turn the corner, one of the things that had to take place is you had to get them battling for the whole game. Now that I've seen them do that, my expectations would be for that to be the case every week. Because I've already seen evidence of them do it against a good team. So now we just got to play better. Okay, and I think that starts with Dane on offense, because other than the center, he's the only one who has the ball in his hands on every play.
Other than the crowd being against you instead of for you, why is it so hard to win on the road for all teams?
I've really never thought of it that, you know, about winning on the road versus winning at home. Sometimes the crowd more against you when you're home. But usually that's well deserved, you know. I mean, there's been times where it's actually easier playing on the road. But I think that the other team has the environment of their whole stadium, you know. I know that, you know, they know the wind, they know the weather, they know, you know, I've played in stadiums where you look at the flags at, you know, up top and the ones on the field are totally opposite. Or there's areas of the field where it looks like it's breezy, but there's no wind on the 30-yard line on the left hash. I mean, you get to know the nature of your own place. But other than that, I think that sometimes there's even advantages of playing on the road. Because when you go there, as long as you handle it as a business trip, you have very few distractions. When you're home, and I'm not saying it as a negative, having your family and friends in is a bad thing. That's a great thing. But, you know, you're worrying about tickets. You know, you're worrying about where dinner's going to be after the game. You know, there's a lot of other factors. In our case, we're worried about recruiting weekends, which kids we have in, which are unofficial, which are official. I mean, there's, you know, what are you gonna do? You have to do a recruiting dinner Saturday night. I mean, all those things tie in there. So for you as a coach, when you're going on the road, you go to a hotel, you have your meetings, okay, go watch a little TV, go to bed, get up, have meetings in the day, hop on the bus, go to the game, let's go. So if you really think about it, there's a lot less distractions when you're going on a road game. The biggest thing you have is the bus trip from the hotel to the game.
I know you weren't here, but so those streaks don't make sense either.
No, I think that usually good football teams win at home. And usually bad football teams lose on the road. So we've been one of them. So that's one of the things that, you know, there's several steps that we have to take this year. One of them is win a game on the road. Let's get that one behind us too. This would be a good time to do that.
Along these same lines, can you use last year's Northern Illinois game at all the film, and you show the players that game? Can you gain anything?
Yeah, we'll show them that game. You know, we've also read that, you know, we didn't win the game, they lost the game. You know, so you use that a little bit. You know, obviously, it wasn't because you played good, it's because they played bad. You know, it wasn't because you made plays at the end of the game. You know, it was because they didn't play well at the end of the game. So, you know, you use that, you know, you use that tool. But, you know, you watch the things, I mean, the same defensive coordinators, they didn't change. I mean, those same guys run the defense they ran last year, same head coach. I mean, so I think that, you know, it's really not gonna be that much of a difference other than our schemes, so, you know, quite different than the scheme they ran last year. That's the difference.